to Drummers Only Radio. Drummers Only is the UK's leading drum shop with store locations in Glasgow and Leeds. Our podcasts are full of interviews, gear reviews, and much more from the unique perspective of a drum shop. The show is hosted by two pasty Scottish dudes who talk real fast. Whoa, slow down there, Braveheart. So here's Chris, the Glasgow shop manager, and Adam, the social media manager. Be sure to like, subscribe, and let's do this.
Hello.
Hi, Chris.
Drummers Only Radio episode 36. This is the last one of the year.
Last one of 2020. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? We don't know.
I mean, it's only a good thing, right? If 2021 is better than 2020.
Exactly. Yeah.
But if 2021 is worse than 2020, we all be like, take me back to those 2020 times when I couldn't leave the house.
Remember those times? What times they were?
The times they are changing.
I was just going to say that. Oh man. So we've cobbled together a collection of stories from the podcasts of this year.
Yeah.
We've done a fair few.
We have. We've done. I don't know how many. 30.
I think so. I think the first one we did for this year was Paul Savage, and that was episode 12. And if this is episode 36,
yeah, so 24
episodes. And those are 24 episodes. I think personally, in my opinion, some of them are chock full of nuggets of gold.
I mean, there's some absolute gold in there that you've shared with us. That Adam did all the work for this. I can't even claim to have done any more than sat in this seat and record what we're recording now. So
pretty much.
Yep.
Thanks.
No, thank you. Thank you.
No, thank you.
We started videoing them this year, which was new.
Yes.
We hadn't done that before.
That's something I'm going to just highlight in the first story that we go into today. The first story that we go into is the only one that doesn't have video. So, for you audio listeners, that doesn't really matter because you're just going to hear the audio versions of these stories anyway. But for video listeners, just to make you aware, the first one, video...
Watchers?
Is that what it is? The watcher? Okay. Start again. For you video watchers, this is the first story is the only one out of these that we've selected that doesn't have video. But use your imagination.
Yeah, so the video actually came out of an accident. It just came out of lockdown. Like, how do we actually do a podcast? Oh, let's do it on this Zoom thing.
Yeah. We'd spoke about it a little bit, like prior to, obviously.
But it kind of forced us.
Yeah, forced the hand, as it were.
So thank you all for your support of the podcast this year. We feel the back end of the year it's grown a wee bit.
Yeah,
more.
I would totally agree, yeah.
More people are watching than listening by the looks of the figures. So... the fact that anybody watches or listens is remarkable to me.
Absolutely, yeah. We get a lot of repeat listeners, but it's nice to get obviously new listeners. Much the same way it's nice getting new customers into the shop.
Absolutely.
So
it's all synergized,
nice.
Yeah, thank you for the consumption of our podcast. Please continue to do so, and we'll continue to make it.
Yes, of course. If you're listening to it, you've obviously already found it, but you know where to find us. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, all the usual suspects. Absolutely.
And if there's please recommend a friend if you would like them to, if they think they would dig it. We have guitarists listen to it.
We do, yeah.
So that's cool. Have a wonderful, wonderful new year. Hope your festive period was good.
Yes, and we'll see you in 2021.
We will.
We've got a very cool episode planned for the first episode. That's all I'm going to say about it. I'm going to tease that.
Yes,
I'm just going to let that sit.
Yeah, you should watch it if you can.
Yeah, I would agree with Chris. If you're able to watch the next episode after this one, we highly recommend you do so. And
yeah, enjoy, and we'll see you soon.
See you soon. See you in 2021.
Bye.
Bye. So what better way to kick us off than going all the way back to January of 2020, where we went to Chem 19. We took a little shop field trip and we visited Mr. Paul Savage. This was a lovely conversation with Paul. Here he is talking about one of his most memorable recording experiences.
It's a tough one. Are you talking drum wise or just session wise?
Just session wise, have you came out of a particular session and just thought, man, that was I'm kind of sad that's over, you know?
Yeah, that would be there was a combination of 2 albums that I did, and I shouldn't really be saying this because it's not in this studio. Although, both of them were involved in this in a slight way. It was about 10 years ago, maybe more, doing the first Phantom Band record, and at the same time I got asked to work on the third Franz Ferdinand record, and we were working on demos in Govan Town Hall. And
Of all places.
Of all places, yeah. This is where this is going. Govan Town Hall is a fascinating space, and I think it's been developed in the hall now, but the hall itself is just this empty, it was an unused part of the building. In Film City, we're developing the rooms in different parts of the building. So the Dolby Studio's there, the only Dolby studio in Scotland is in in Govan Town Hall in Film City, in Savalas Sound. So we were in, Franz Ferdinand had a little room at the back of what is the main hall, or the main stage area in the main hall. So you come in the hall and you look at this huge room with the glass up on one side, huge big double, it had a balcony, so balcony bit, which was actually really dangerous to walk on. And then the old stage, and then behind that there was a green room, which is where Franz Ferdinand had their rehearsal space. So we started doing demos in there. The room itself was really interesting because it was quite close to the main stage. It had a hollowed out bit below it. So we were recording Paul's old Ludwig kit without a skin on the front. So I remember the bass drum was just like quite dead, but the room boomed because the room had a hollowed out bit below it. So I found there was a sweet spot on the other side of the room I could put a mic, and it just had this tremendous thump to it. So I loved that room. It was really weirdly perfect for recording that type of drum sound because it was carpeted, really thick, old, stinking green carpet, which had this spongy sort of feel to it, but it was spongy and sticky. And then the walls were like quite ornately done because it was old school and it had like lots of wood paneling and stuff like that. It had some pillars in it, which also had lots of detail, which, I'm not telling you this just to get a picture of the room. It actually sonically is a diffuser if you've got lots of detail. So these things that are in the wall, which are just like little boxes with little spaces, the sound hits them and disperses them. So a bookcase is a good example of a diffuser. Right. Lots of different spines on books and different lines and nothing flat. So you get this kind of sound hits it, diffuses, sounds good. So this room had a naturally good sound. I was supposed to just be doing the demos, and then the band decided that they were going to do the record there. And Alex had bought this old 1960s maybe desk by a very, very unknown company called Flickinger. Apparently this desk was haunted. That was the story. Like this haunted desk came over from Chicago. And it was a thing of beauty. It was an absolute masterpiece. It was an incredible looking desk. It sounded incredible. It was so over-spec'd. It was such a great sounding desk. And we did the recording in Govan Town Hall. They brought a producer in and I was the engineer at the time. And so we recorded the third album, which was called Tonight, in there. And it was a joy to work on. We were taking the kit, and we had the kit options for the kit in 3 different rooms. We had the room I was telling you about, the green room with the carpet in it. We had the actual hall itself, which we could take all the kit and put it in the hall, which was crazy reverb, like stupid sort of reverb. And then they also put on a couple of songs, we put it actually in the story space below the stage, which is kind of like where all the stage props and stuff would be. So there was a junk room down there it was quite a garagey sounding place. So we had 3 different places, and Dan Carey, who was producing it, was really up for experimenting with different things. So the first single is called Ulysses, and in Ulysses we had mic'd up the kit in the dry room, in the green room with the carpet, And then he said, for the middle eight, can we go into the hall? But I want the mics exactly and the kit exactly the same. So we had to mark it all, take it, all the mics, and then put it in the hall. And just by doing that, taking it from one room to the other, it was an incredible sort of difference in sound. You can hear it in the record. It sounds like somebody just put a reverb plug-in in it. But it's not. It's actually we just shifted the whole kit and put it in that room. So we were using these spaces, which is a fantastic thing to do as an engineer. And certainly as a drummer, you get to hear different tones and different things. So how a kit sounds in a different room. So they went to mix it in London with Dan. And because the session had ran on a little bit, I was working roughly at the same time as on the Phantom Band's first record for our label. And I was supposed to be finishing it off, but I had postponed it because we were running over. And then I wanted to come in and mix it in here, but I couldn't because somebody else had booked the time and because I had been a wee bit late. So I had 2 weeks booked, but no studio. So I asked Franz Ferdinand if we could just mix it in their place on this beautiful desk. Which was kind of like a makeshift studio. It's an incredible desk, but it wasn't a typical studio in the sense that the room wasn't tuned or had any sort of like obviously sort of like special soundproofing. It was a wee bit of a kind of like, it was just a really kind of vibey place to record, and it was, you're never really quite sure if it was the right thing to do, but it was always came up with really cool sounds. So looking back, it was like, okay, we'll do it in there, we'll try it. I was mixing on these speakers I didn't know, in this room I didn't know, in this desk I'd never used before. We also had a setup where instead of like a lot of reverb and stuff like that, I thought going back to the old ways that people used to mic up vocals and drum kits is they not mic up, but they would affect them by sending a copy of the recording into another room live. So there'd be a speaker connected to the desk that's in another room. So there'd be a tiled room or something somewhere. And then on the back of that tiled room, there'd be like a stereo set of microphones. So you get the sense of space. So you can basically put the vocal into that room or a snare drum into that room. So a lot of old recordings used echo chambers.
Almost like reamping.
Yeah, so it's like reamping, but live. Yeah. So I thought, actually, we've got the ultimate echo chamber in Govan Town Hall. So I put a pair of Genelecs on the side on the stage and ran a cable like all the way down the stairs and along the corridor to the live room, to the control room where the desk was. And I thought, this probably won't work, it's crazy. But then I put 2 Neumann mics, beautiful Neumann mics, one and far away from the other, left and right, at the other side of the hall. So like 30 metres up the hall. So it's a big hall. It's probably got a reverb time of like
a week.
Like, oh yeah, it's crazy. So like, okay, this is extreme, but that's a lot of fun. So I tried it, and it was the most incredible and opulent and over the top thing I've ever done in a recording session. I had a basic Govan Town Hall as a reverb chamber. I could put the vocals in it. I could put the snare drum in it. It was just incredible. So all that, I mean, a lot of it wasn't recorded. It was just live. So as I was mixing, I mean, God knows what the people who worked in Govan Town Hall were thinking. It was like, I'm hearing this song again and again. Or I'm hearing this screeching backing vocal that sounds like a banshee coming out of this studio, this hallway. And there was these 2 mics picking up, and it was just the most incredible thing to have, especially for things like, there was like on the end of the first song, there's a big tom bit that ends the whole song. It's the sound of a tom, and it's basically the sound of that being sent into that room and dying off. And a lot of the backing vocals, quite Morricone, right? Sort of like really long 60s backing vocals. I mean, not going through anything else except it's just real air and microphone, and just no plug-in could ever emulate that. It was just one of the most incredible things. And I probably didn't appreciate it, and it's only just like in the last couple of years. In fact, that first album was reissued last year, and thinking back on it, that was one of those moments where it was like, doing the Franz Ferdinand album in there and doing the Phantom Band's first album mix in there on that desk, because the desk is incredible, and in that room and having that kind of thing to play with. I will never get that again. You talk about old studios, like, I mean, it's like having Abbey Road as a reverb chamber.
Yeah.
It's like, move over, Beatles, we want to use this to send a snare drum in here.
Man,
you know,
it's amazing.
One of my most favourite conversations from this year was with SJC co-founder Mike Ciprari. Here he is now talking about the evolution of a family and getting out of a creative funk. It's worth noting that the co-host on this episode was with our lead store manager, Jake Brooksbank. Eagerness for the company to grow, and you're so excited about it all the time, but you can see it in all the people that work with you as well. I think that's what's really cool, is like, it's not just, you're not just leading the charge and everyone's just kind of like, oh, okay. Like, everyone else is just as upbeat about it as you are, and I think that's what's, certainly from an outside perspective, has helped make it look, or certainly helped it grow. And you can see it as well with a lot of your younger audience. Like, there's no bullshit there. Do you know what I mean? There's no, like...
Totally. Like,
if you compare it to, I'm not going to name specific companies, but, like, with other companies, you get that very big sense of there is a definite ladder here, and like a certain person on that ladder above a certain pay grade will not even want to know who you are. Whereas, you know, like everyone, like including yourself, Mike, the owner of SJC is just like, yeah, what's up, man? What's up? How's it going?
Yeah,
you know?
That's really important to me. I see other companies, you know, not even specifically just in this music industry, drum community, but, you know, like my dad owned a car dealership for 35 years. And so I grew up with him being an entrepreneur, businessman. And, you know, I would go to meetings with him, and that stuff always kind of turned me off. And so, you know, surrounding yourself with like-minded, successful people that can do things that you can't and can put you in your place, I think is extremely important. And I feel very lucky to have such a strong team and, you know, around me and with me. And so this past NAMM that we did in January, was incredible. Everything felt, not for the first time, but everything felt, we've gone through some crazy growing pains over the past many years. And so in January, celebrating our 20th anniversary, having our team there, our marketing team anyway, you know, half the company, every day just felt incredible. We were at the Airbnb all together. We were at dinner together, and we were just on such a high of positivity and ideas, and it felt like there's no end in sight for this company. I'm still sifting through ideas from our sessions, from being at the Airbnb. And like, we just have so many ideas on product and marketing and activations. And I'm so lucky to have that crew. We call ourselves the Taco Boy crew. So we have a text thread going, the Taco Boy thread, and we've got different documents, Taco Boy this, Taco Boy that. So we're just, I feel lucky, man. I'm re-inspired and reinvigorated more than ever. Especially, you know, after 20 years, you know, they've been pretty long years at times, but it's 20 short years, really. You know, we're such a young, new company still, and we're so eager still to just craft cool things, cool drums.
That Toy Story snare drum that you guys built for them was absolutely awesome.
Thanks, man.
That was
Thanks, dude. And that's again such a testament to our team. You know, we brainstorm ideas, put them in the workload, and then, you know, the guys on the floor start building them. And Louis came up to me, he's just like, yo, what if we put you know, the stuffed animals of these, you know, where Woody says stuff. What if we get one and put that in the drum? I'm like, yeah, incredible. That's exactly what we're going to do. So I bought one on Amazon. We ripped it apart and put the pull string, and he's like, I got a snake in my boots. Like, dude, like it's just those types of things that happen through that creative process are so fun. And again, testament to our workers and our drummers that play our stuff that are willing to trust us to do that. So thank you.
Yeah,
for sure. So Adam, you said that your favorite kit was the DeLorean kit.
Yeah.
My favorite kit was probably the Jaws kit.
The Jaws
Jake
kit was sick. So good.
It was 4 Years Strong.
4 Years Strong, yeah.
As soon as I saw that, I was like, oh my days, that is something I've never seen before. How he found a stand to fit that rack tom in, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But it was just insane, and it was something I'd never seen before. So Mike, I know you've probably got a handful, but if you can just pick one or two of your favorite builds ever.
Yeah, thank you guys for saying both those are your favorite. Those are both incredible builds. We had such a blast building those. That Jaws kit is one of the all-time just top ones. And Jake Masuka, the drummer of 4 years, a great friend of mine. He was one of the first supporters of SJC.
Yeah, is he local to you guys? They're Massachusetts based, aren't they?
Just up the street. So my old band in 4 year would play shows all the time.
Yeah.
And when SJC started, Jake and the guys came to my grandma's basement and visited, the factory. And, we've crafted a lot of drums for them, and it's always a blast. Jake is a very creative dude, and just got to give shout out to 4 year. Those dudes their new record is incredible.
Yeah, they're killing
awesome.
I've been in love with that band for many, many years, but the new stuff is awesome as well.
Incredible. So, with that said, all of the drums we craft are again, kind of like my babies, my children going out into the world. So I love them all. But my most memorable and I would say hands down my favorite is the first wood burn kit that we did with the Butcher. It was a huge kit. It was like a 24 or 26-inch kick drum, an 18-inch floor, and a 13-inch rack. And drums had been wood burn, I want to say maybe like with little designs, but never as intricate as that. The Butcher, his name is Andy Morotek, and he played in a band called The Academy Is. And they're one of the bands that kind of changed my thinking about creativity and drums. Met Andy through Panic at the Disco, and no, I didn't. I met Andy at the Palladium in Worcester. It was them, Midtown, and Hidden in Plain View, and Matchbook Romance playing. And I went to visit the drummer of Midtown, and I met Andy at that show. They were on Crush Management, on Fuel by Ramen, so they were kind of like getting their spark at the same time as Panic at the Disco. And Andy is an incredibly talented musician and artist, and he came out to Massachusetts and stayed with me at my apartment for like a week. And he's like, dude, I have an idea to do a full wood burn kit. And he stayed at that factory in our garage shop for 6 days straight, night and day. I would bring him Taco Bell every like 6 hours
just to make sure he was okay.
Yeah, dude. He put these incredible owls and just I'll send you a picture. We can post about it.
Yeah, I think I've seen it.
Such a crazy kit. And then we just put a really, really simple walnut to like a colonial maple to natural fade. And we put wood badges. One of them looked like an acorn and like a squirrel. And we took that kit to NAMM that year, and it just turned a lot of heads. It had wood hoops and it sounded incredible. I burned all the wood hoops. It has like little lines throughout all the hoops. So he's like, dude, his hand was cramping up at like day 5. He's like, you got to do all the lines. It's not hard. So I did all the lines, and it was just such a memorable moment for me where the drums were incredible. But it was a turning point for me where getting to know Butcher through that process really changed my way of thinking of drums, like where that allowed me to, it allowed the Butcher hoops to be born, because we made the Butcher hoops based on Butcher. And that allowed for things like the DeLorean kit to have the big wood hoops on the bottom, or the Jaws kit to have the big, shark teeth hoops. None of those would have happened if it weren't for that relationship with the Butcher and his creativity that inspired me and my brother. So that one right there is hands down my favorite.
Amazing.
Dude, that's so cool.
So cool.
Like, I mean, it's quite interesting to just think about how it's evolved. Like, do you get involved a lot in the actual building process anymore? Or
that's a touchy subject, because our manufacturing in the factory, they have such a flow and a process, and the work order goes in, the parts are pulled, it goes through the steps, it gets photoed, it goes into our sound booth, and it ships out. I'm not very, and I mean this in the friendliest way possible, I'm not very welcome in the factory, because I go out and I see stuff and I'm like, ooh, what's this? Like, this would look really cool, adding a stripe of this, or like I just see things again because of Butcher or my brother or the guys in the factory. Like, I'm just inspired by so much, and I always want to add things to the process that gets frustrating, because then you either got to go approve it by the customer, or the guys have to then go back a few steps. So we've worked on this process over the last few years where like I know where I can kind of not step in where I'm going to make somebody angry. But NAMM and artist drums and things like that, I take a lot of pride in getting involved with trying to push the limits and going, all right, cool, the artist wants this, but what if we did this? Yeah. If we did this, it would be something new in the industry. It would kind of maybe be a trendsetter, or turn some heads where it won't just be your typical Age White Pearl drum set. It'll be an Age White Pearl drum set turned on its side where there's 4 or 5 other accoutrements, if you will, that other drum companies. I use that word in my head a lot. What accoutrements can we add?
I can't spell it, but it's a good word.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't spell it either. We're drummers, man. We don't know how to spell or do things like that. We can count to 4. So yeah, I try to, and I love getting involved. Like, we've done a lot of yard sale drums where we'll go through the factory and liquidate a lot of old stuff. And I like getting involved with that. You know, I do like to get in and assemble a little bit. I know it's kind of a pain in the butt for the guys because it's taking their tools, and I'm kind of in their way a little bit. But I like to do that because it kind of brings me back to the early days and the getting my hands dirty. Like, my mom helped me assemble a bunch of drums last year. It just, I don't know. To me, it's staying true to our roots, and it's getting me back, not just behind a desk, because I live 99% of my life work-wise in spreadsheets and things like that. So, it's not the most welcome all the time, but I do enjoy it.
And I guess that helps kind of freshen you up for when you do go back to the office, if you will, of like going back to the spreadsheets, because then you're kind of bringing a whole new energy to it again because you've been back to the roots of it, you know?
Totally. Yeah. And I implore any business owner or any musician that is in a creative funk to like just stop, get out of what you're in day to day and go out and do something different. Like, for a few years, I was out drum teching and just going on the road and being with the artists, because it would give me an insight to the issues they were experiencing to help figure out new ways to craft drums. And it's a new way of looking at things. And again, you know, just getting back to the early days for me, like remembering why we're here, and just for the love of the drum, you know.
Steve White is such a well-respected drummer within our industry, so it was an absolute pleasure to get a chance to sit down and have a conversation with him. Here he is now, talking about the importance of playing for the song.
The kind of the right thing to do. And as I say, my approach is very basic. I don't, I take the basics, I take the rudiments, and I know that that's not popular with some kinds of drummers, but I take them. I think that using the rudiments musically is something that I really enjoy, being able to explore using basics of singles and doubles and subdivisions. But making a band sound good and an artist sound good, and being able to really have had a good attempt at that studio skill, because you see some phenomenal drummers on social media, and you see some phenomenal drummers with extraordinary technique, but you kind of know that if you were to record them, it would sound like a car crash, because there's no sort of deference to dynamics. There's no all the subtleties that never get talked about on social media. It's just, brilliant. Yeah. We all love technique, but what technique has become on some elements of the drum world is, if you could imagine hiring a brilliant crafts person to come around and do a great job for you, whether it's a really intricate electrical job or a plumbing job or something, or some amazing rendering, something, very practical. What generally somebody that's really good does is they come round, they work from a very clean stool. They don't just chuck all their tools on the floor and just open to pick the right chisel or trowel. That doesn't happen. What they do is they pick the right thing for the job, and everything is polished and it's clean and it's sharp. And that for me is what technique is about, working on technique. But you don't go in and just throw everything on the table, because no one's interested in that. Yeah. And some of the songwriters that I've worked with over the years, I can, Paul and Noel and John Martin, when I did some stuff with him, they're not really that interested in drum per se. They like drummers. They love what drums bring to the music, but when you start going off to, into the realms of long drum solos and things like that, they're not interested. No. So it's a bit of a cul-de-sac that I try to tell my students to just be a little bit careful of just drums and drumming for drum's sake. Yeah. Because you've got to have the other elements that make you progress, which is music, it's songs, it's bass players and guitarists and keyboard players and vocalists, and your contribution to their output is what creates the rounded musician, not just a drummer.
Yeah, I mean, watching the lo-fi sessions has been an amazing education because you see how you do it musically.
Thank you.
So, I was watching. Is my fire gone out? Is that the name? Yeah, I was watching that earlier. You play that first fill, and it wasn't until you explained it was triplets, because I heard it as 16th notes the first time I heard it. I was like, oh, okay, I get it.
And it's on beat too.
Yeah, right.
Ding, 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 and that's, and a lot of people have gone, I never knew that.
Yeah. do you teach that though? Do you teach people how to sneak it in, as it were, or how to make like the doubles and changing, man? How you take something really simple that's beautifully musical, but it needs technique to execute it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does make sense, and that's what I'm trying to do, is to try and sort of push across this mantra that music comes first, and your support of the song comes first. And we in this country, we produce some of the best song drummers on the planet, and America really has a kind of an edge on us in a certain technical approach because they've been doing it a lot longer. But if you look at the drummers who I love, I mean, from Woody Woodmansey to Ginger to all the way up to Stephen Morris and Rennie and Henry Spinetti and all of these, and I could go on and on about the joys of and talents of what British drummers bring to the table, and people like Ted McKenna, God rest him, songs, they play for the song, and so my sort of thing, it always kind of starts from that point of view. And then if you're working on your technique, you can start to push ideas in if you're confident. If you're, one of the things I do is subdivisions. I love the whole idea of working with something like Joe Morello's Table of Time, being able to take a subdivision, quarter note triplet, eighth note triplet, 16th note, quintuplet, sextuplet, septuplet, 32nd notes, 9s, 10s, 11s, 12s, and then to try to sort of break them up, to try and sort of, can I do these as doubles now? Can I do these as paradiddles? Can I make, and then try to make them musical? And some people do say, well, if you're just thinking about sticking patterns all the time, you're not really creating music. But I think that if you do pay enough attention to the basics, what happens in the same way that you learn a language, and we're just free-forming in terms of conversation here, but we still have to learn the basics. So if you're in command of basic language, you eventually can converse. And I think if you are in charge and very well versed in the basics of drumming, then it makes it easier to converse musically. So you're not thinking paradiddle, double, 6, 4, 4. You don't. It's not like that. It becomes a conversation. So that's why I'm so, and I do think, I'm not a fusion drummer. I'm not a jazz drummer, although I love jazz and I love fusion. I know what my strengths are, playing and supporting songs and supporting pop. And I know and have learned and worked on the things that really helped me to be a good pop drummer. And that is being confident. That's being able to play with a click track. That's being able to almost mix your own playing. So, so that when you do play, and listening to, I listen to a lot of classic records, but when you do play, you're playing as if the engineer is not going to have to do very much when they put your drums up. It's not, we need to gate that snare drum, or, the double strokes are not really coming out. And that, again, is a very esoteric skill. And you listen to all the Motown drummers, and you listen to drummers like Steve Jordan, and you listen to drummers like Keith Carlock, and they have that ability to sound almost like they're mixing themselves. And Questlove, people like that, they are masters at that. And that, I think, is a skill that doesn't get spoken about enough, because being able to go in and start that process with the engineer in the room and say, look, these are my drums. You know, how do you think they sound? Do they sound good in the room? Oh, yeah, they sound really good in the room. That builds a confidence straight away rather than trying to listen to an individual drum from a snare mic in another room. The drums sound good on their own. Well, that's a basis. You know, is there enough dampening in the bass drum? Is there too much dampening in the bass drum? Have you got a reference? You know, I remember working with LaRue, and she came in and she said, I want the drums to sound like, when you hit the toms, they sound like paper. And I said, okay, have you got like a musical reference that you can play me? And she put on Young Americans by Bowie and Dennis Davis playing drums. And clearly, I think that they were either heavily compressed drums or possibly concert toms, you know, bottom head taken off, quite heavily gaffered, you know, lots of dampening. So we whipped the heads off, you know, we put some dampening on, some moon gels, and I hit them and it kind of went, goo, goo, goo. And she went, yeah, that's it. That's what I want. So, you know, just trying to be accommodating and trying to build up that musical rapport. But then, as I say, if you're working on those kind of basics all the time and you're keeping, you know, your chops up, when you get an opportunity to do something like Changing Man, where Paul's like, well, I don't want a random fill. He hated random fills, Paul. He liked sort of a musicality to the fill. So, you know, the quarter note thing, very sort of solid. And when it got to that little embellishment, I was able to just do a very relaxed 30-second stroke roll. And that's all it is. It's a 30-second stroke roll for 1.5 beats. And it fitted perfectly, and then straight back to that quarter note. There was no, and I have heard drummers do it, where it's almost like leaping off a cliff when you get to that double stroke roll. And because they don't, you know, they think, is it in time? Are you just trying to do almost like a scratch roll, which I'm not. It's just subdivided and it's just 30 seconds and it's as easy, you know, as anything because I've put the work in to have my tech respond in that way.
Of course, we haven't just spoke to guests on this podcast this year. We've tried to get a little bit creative and a little bit different. So with that in mind, here's an excerpt from an episode we did earlier this year. Here's how simply changing the hoop can make such a drastic difference to the sound of a drum.
So in front of us, we talked about this at the top of this episode. We have two Yamaha Stage Custom Snail Stairs.
You nailed that. Do you want to do that again?
In front of us, we have two Yamaha Stage Custom Snail Stairs.
Snail Stairs.
That's Neil Stairs' brother. So what we decided to do with this is about a year or so ago, maybe longer, I wrote a blog post before Adam. In fact, it'll be longer than that because it was before you were working here. So it was a couple of years ago. I wrote a blog post around the theme of how to change your snare drum without changing your snare drum. So the three key elements I found to be true outside of the shell are hoops, heads, and wires. So we decided to take two identical drums and put two identical heads on them, but we've changed the hoops. So the drum that is on my left is the drum right out the box with an ambassador coated on it, which has triple flanged hoops. And the drum that's on Adam's right is the box, but with die-cast hoops on it, top and bottom. Now, the caveat is that these are not Yamaha die-cast hoops. Yamaha die-cast hoops are slightly different from regular die-cast hoops in that they are aluminium and not steel. These are steel die-cast hoops, and in fact, they are pedal steel die-cast hoops. So, yeah, we're going to play a little bit of each drum just so that you can hear how changing just a simple thing like the hoops will really affect the sound. Now, the way I tuned them is I got the bottom heads roughly to be the same, and then I used exactly the same method for each top head. I got them to tension, and then I basically put half a turn on each one. What was really remarkable is how quickly the die-cast hoop version came to tension versus the triple flanged hoop.
Yeah,
you know, so
because the die-cast obviously heavier, isn't it?
Absolutely, it's heavier. So you're going to notice a few things. To me, I think the die-cast is just much more articulate. It gets to the core of the sound. There's less ring.
Yeah, it's much drier.
Yeah, which I don't know why surprised me.
Well, I think obviously the weight of the hoop would dry, in my opinion, or my thought process is the weight of the hoop would dry out the drum a lot.
You're absolutely correct, and I should know that, but it just was surprising to hear them side by side.
Yeah. Is this the first time you've done a comparison like this where it's literally been two of the same drum?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It
So,
is.
wow.
It is. So yeah, the first one I'll play. I'll play the one with the triple flash tubes, and then Adam, because it's beside him, can play the one with the die cast tubes. So here goes. There you
Beautiful.
go.
It sounds great.
Yeah, it does, man. Don't
That's,
forget
that's
the
obviously the drum.
throws off on that. It does sound great, and the only difference between this and out the box is it's an American head
Yeah.
as opposed to a Far Eastern head, but they're effectively both single ply heads.
Yeah. So now I'm going to play the stage custom snare with the die cast tubes.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I mean,
I like that a lot.
it's just instantly a pro drum.
Mm-hmm.
Instantly, like it's a very, very different machine
Yeah.
with those hoops on it.
It's interesting as well because usually on those kind of, I guess, lower end steel drums, there is that ring to it,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But I'm actually quite blown away by how much the die-cast hoop's taken that away.
Yeah,
So
the crack.
there's no dampening on these drums either. It's
Yes,
worth mentioning.
correct.
Yeah.
There's like a mid-end crack there. It's just it becomes like this backbeat machine.
Oh, big time, yeah.
And I think, and this is without bagging this drum because it's amazing for the money. What is it, like 120 quid or something?
Something like that. Crazy.
Yeah. So it hits a price point, and I think what people must understand is it hits a price point. It gets you. I mean, it's a 10 lug drum. Firstly, for that kind of money, it's really solidly built. But in order to hit that price point, there's only so much they can do, which is why it comes with triple flanged hoops and not die cast hoops.
Yeah.
But the minute you put a die cast on the top, or on well, it's top and bottom, it's just a different thing, different animal entirely.
Big time, yeah. I would love to hear what it sounds like with a die-cast hoop and maybe a thicker head on it, like maybe an Emperor or UB2
absolutely,
or something.
Yeah. I mean, that could be another thing we do, where we do the same thing, but we change heads. And I think it would be really, really loud.
Oh yeah, big time. This is the kind of, I can see like with the die-cast hoops on it, I can see someone who plays a lot of rock music who really needs to cut through and hit hard.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like it's got Big Dave all over it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, it'll stay in tune because of the weight of the hoops. You know, and I think you would probably pay about 80 quid a hoop. Die-cast hoops are expensive.
Yeah.
They're not cheap. But that still brings that drum 80s 160. It brings that drum in at under 300 quid if you had die-cast hoops, which is bonkers.
And it sounds like a well more than £300 drum.
And what it also gives you is another drum.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have two snare drums. So you have the same drum, and you can do, you know, depending on what it is you need to go and do. If you need something to be a bit more sensitive, because the die-cast hoops take away a lot of the sensitivity.
Yeah.
So the triple flash hoops, because the drum's a little bit more open. And what you can't see on the camera is that the triple flash, because it needs to be, to get to the same level of tension, you end up just putting a little bit more turns on the key. It brings the hoop closer to the head. There's much more space between.
I was going to say that's
the
strikingly
head and the hoop.
the first thing I noticed, certainly, and obviously it's unfortunate you can't pick this up on the camera, but there is like, you can at least fit like almost up to the top line of your finger between, whereas on this you can barely get your fingernail on the triple flange version.
Can I borrow a stick, please?
Of course you can.
Because just one, because you only need one.
Okay.
We never did a rim click.
We never. You're right.
So that's the triple flange hoop versus.
And then here's the die-cast hoop. I'm rim clicking with my opposite hand there. It felt weird.
Can you do it the other way?
Uh-huh.
So, yeah. Yeah, just crazy. The
Bonkers
difference in
loud.
volume.
Yeah.
So if you've got to play those kind of, you've got to play a ballad or something, you've just got a little bit more power behind your rim click as well. So, massive advocate of doing things like that. If you're on a really tight budget and you're bored with your snare drum sound, throw some new hoops on it, man.
Yeah.
Tama do some great options. We should have, if we could have at some point, we could have done an S hoop too. So that's maybe for next time. We'll get S hoops involved, and the S hoops are like a hybrid. They have the I don't know what I tried to say. Rigidity and something else it's like a combo platter between die cast and triple flanged. A bit flatter as well on the top.
It's worth pointing out with these two drums that we have in front of us that they basically are as standard, other than obviously one having a die-cast hoop, so they still have the same wires that would come with it as well.
Yes, they do.
So I mean,
And bottom head.
Can you imagine with the same drum with obviously the die-cast hoop on it, but like a set of pure sound wires on it?
Yeah, man,
or
some
like
twisters or
equalizer
some
wires.
blasters or something.
Yeah, like just really, because obviously with the weight of the die-cast hoop, obviously it takes a lot of the sensitivity of the snare away, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So with twisted wires, you're obviously getting double the wire for your money, or even super 30s. Get a lot of that. You still get that power and that rim shot, but then you'd also kind of regain some of that sensitivity. With thicker wires
amazing,
and more
amazing.
wires.
So yeah, if you are, and don't forget you can get die-cast hoops with 8 lugs. So if you've got an old Acolyte that you want to spruce up or do something a little different with, or even if you have, Pero's modern utility drums come with 8 lugs on them. So if you wanted to up the game on one of them,
Absolutely. This isn't limited to just this Yamaha Stage Custom snare.
No.
Like if you've got a kind of relatively mid to low end snare drum, like I could pretty much guarantee that changing the hoop will make it remarkably different.
Absolutely. I mean, if you want to get the sensitivity and the power, just put a die-cast on the top. Just leave the bottom.
Yeah.
And then mix and match your hoops. There's no reason you can't do that.
No way. Aye. Absolutely.
I think sometimes we fall really, really victim to just being subscribed. Like we buy a drum off the shelf, and because it's presented to us in a certain way, that's kind of what we stick with. We don't explore. I tend to think about this kind of almost like effects pedals in a way. It's a way of changing the sound of the core instrument. Without any sort of wizardry, really. You've just changed a bit of metal. I find it really fascinating.
It would be fascinating to do a blind. So I guess in a way, people listening to this are getting a blind sound test if they aren't watching it. And obviously, if we hadn't told them which snare was which, it'd be interesting to see, like, okay, so what's different about these two drums? Because I guarantee 90% of people would think that they're two completely different drums.
I would. Hands
of
up,
course.
I would easily think they were two different drums. I may even think that the die-cast hoop one is brass because of the volume.
Oh, aye, yeah. I could, yeah, definitely.
Because I do like that you lose a little bit of the ring. I think it takes it just, no need for gels, no need for, you don't really need to temper it anymore because the hoop's doing the job.
The hoop's doing that for you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's kind of made me almost reconsider what hoops I've got in my snare drums currently.
Well, we talked about this as well. If Adam and I had used our brains, we would have both we both have a Yamaha brass drum that's the same size, and mine has die-cast hoops and Adam's has triple flanged. But then we realised that this was another way to show that you can do this on a budget if you don't have 400 quid to spend on a snare drum.
Of course.
But
obviously goes without saying, if you change the hoop on an already expensive snare drum, it's just going to amplify it even more.
Or why not put triple flanged on a die-cast?
Oh yeah, big time.
There's we've gone one way, but there's no reason you can't go the other way. Because we should do that. I'll bring mine in, you bring yours in, and we see how those drums sound. Yours is going to probably be more open.
Yeah,
more sensitive.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, man, into it.
An extremely controversial and very overlooked aspect of playing the drums is tuning them. When we sat down with Jeff Davenport, he expressed the importance of not only using tools such as drum keys, but also using your senses.
Optimistic, isn't it?
Yeah. What really struck me about them, and I don't know about you, Adam, is just you seem to be able to remove the kind of dark art from it and just make it super concise, super simple. Here's how you do it.
Yeah, because I think what you said earlier on about the whole, because we've all been there. I've certainly been there when I was first learning how to tune drums. Like, I remember watching a 25-minute long video on how to tune a snare drum, and the guy hadn't even touched. 15 minutes in, the guy still hadn't even touched the snare drum, and I'm just like, this is no use to me, you know.
Yeah.
So
keeping it relevant is very important, because I've been a gigging drummer like everybody else has been a gigging drummer, and I've done those 75, 80-pound gigs down the pub where you lose your drum key down the back of the stage. You have all these monitoring issues. It's just loud. Everybody's drunk. You know, this is where you need to get your sound for the evening, like really quickly, because the bass player is telling you to be quiet. And you've got all these pressures. But you've also got the most complicated piece of, equipment on the stage.
Yeah.
You know, I've always said this, a bass player has 4 screws and he's got a machine to help him.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can have up to 72 tuning bolts to adjust very quickly, to sell the band, to make it sound good, to make you sound good. And if you sound good, you play better and you get asked back. But yeah, I think it's really important to work concisely, work quickly without distraction. So no children, no TV, no internet, just you and a drum. And I have this thing about using your hands and your sight, your senses, really, usefully. Yeah. So I have a tuning triangle. You might have seen it before, which is just sight, sound, and feel. So you put sight. What does it look like? How am I doing? Does it look correct sound-wise? Keep monitoring the drum. Keep hitting the drum, so that you're putting sound and sight together, and then feel like what's the resistance on the screws, and you put all of these 3 things together, you have all of your senses working. And we are the best machine, a tune bot or a tension watch. They're great checking devices for checking what you've done, but they're not the lead element. The lead element is us, so we've got like 30 muscles in each hand and forearm at least. So that's 60 muscles ready, and we've got the equipment, we've got some of us are obviously visually impaired or audibly impaired, but the triangle takes care of that, because if you're missing one thing, so say you're backstage at a gig and you can't hear a thing, or it's pitch black, you should still be able to measure the tension on your drum just using feel on each one. But you just got to go around each one and check it's the same distance from slack. That simple, they call that clearing. In the orchestral world, that's been used as a term for years. And it's called clearing. So you clear a drum. And one of my videos is actually clearing an entire 8 through 16 sonophonic kit.
Wow.
Which happens I think in 3 minutes.
Whoa.
Yeah, because you just work through it. Just work through it, and monitor what you're doing. Yeah, check it. Yeah, find that video.
We'll link it. We'll definitely link that, because that's amazing.
Yeah, yes. So that is, I think that's tuning. It's called a tuning multiple tom setups. So people are often wondering they have like six toms. It's like, how do you tune that lot? Well, actually, if you use the same technique on each drum, the depth of the drum takes you through a scale,
right?
And that's the natural scale of the kit, and that's your starting point. Now, often that's enough. Move on, drink beer, write a book, do something more useful. Don't just tuning for tuning's sake.
Yeah.
So it's a spiral vortex of unhappiness.
Yeah. So then, will that mean that the inherent sound of the kit is natural, top to bottom?
Correct. Yeah. If all the heads are tuned the same way on each one, to the same kind of distance from slack, you will have a scale. And indeed, if you take all the heads off, put them on the floor, you have a scale.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So really, the heads are just kind of guiding what the shells are really just guiding what the head's doing. So I have that analogy. A drum is like a potato crisp. The head is the potato, the shell is the flavouring.
Right. Okay.
So, but really, we do get very excited about drum kits as things, but you take the heads off.
Yeah.
Pretty useless. I mean, I've always thought that, well, I used to have a floor tom as a TV stand. A 16-inch floor tom makes a great television stand.
Heard it here first.
and so they're pretty useless objects unless the heads are there and they're at attention. Then they start to work.
Yeah.
Then they become drums as we know them. So yeah, as quickly as possible, because we've all got really important things to be doing in life, other than tuning drums.
Yeah.
And you, Chris, as a fresh dad, will know that.
Absolutely, man. I don't think apart from in here, I don't think I've seen a drum since February.
There we are. Yeah.
So yeah, you're right.
As quickly as possible now.
Absolutely. So, your knowledge on drum heads, when the times that you have of being in the shop and doing your workshops have left a really sort of indelible impression on people for a long time. We still get people regularly talking about it. Was that something you picked up on the way, or is it just something you like?
Yeah. It's picked, I think, as a pro musician, the times that I have been pro, I've been looking for sounds. I've been looking for it, and I've been interested as a musician, looking at other players. And I've always been, back in the day, we didn't have YouTube, and you just watched videos, or you watched Channel 4, and you got as much information as you could from that media, which meant that you were eagle-eyeing the band and the drummer.
Yeah.
So I got really good at spotting what heads people were playing. So say you'd see I don't know, Steve Gadd perform live on television and be like, I haven't got a VHS. I can't go back and watch this. Bang.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to, right. Oh, that's a pinstripe. That's a K ride. I got really good at, and I can still do it now. I spotted something the other day. It was the old Tears for Fears drummer was playing a clear pinstripe on his snare for this live gig, and a clear pinstripe on a snare drum. Nobody would think, why am I putting it? But back in the day, the pinstripe on the snare was quite a thing. So it all gets stored up. It all comes out, and that was years and years ago. That was through the 80s and 90s, and I think part of being a musician is that we've all got really good memories for playing music. Playing, we can play from scratch. Between us three here, I reckon we could probably do 250 covers, no problem.
Yeah,
without thinking about it. Yeah,
without thinking about Autumn Leaves into Lady in Red into whatever. Musicians generally have really good memories, and sight and sound, I think, plays a part in that journey. You're just looking at other people, and when I was at school in the 80s. We had bands that came to the school as part of initiatives from the council to get new music into schools. This was Derbyshire. And those bands, I was just all over. It's like, oh, wow, that's amazing. And I've seen some amazing drummers. Brian Abrahams was the most amazing drummer I ever met. He's a sonar artist still. He's a jazz drummer. And he came into school with this Gretsch kit, 18, 12, 14, some K cymbals. I'm like 12 years old. It's like, what is that?
Yeah.
And they're diplomats tuned really high, and he still blows my mind. I still can't play like him. It's still an inspiration. So I think, that kind of constant kind of checking and adjustment, and and then becoming a performer myself, I'm going to put some Emperors on today, or I'm going to put some Ambassadors. And why does that still sound terrible? I'm going to put an Emperor on the bottom. Oh, it sounds better now. All of this kind of thing. Just happens as you go along.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's watching and learning. It's that age-old thing.
When you work in a drum store, or in this case, if you own a drum store, Some of the coolest things that can happen is going to see where some of these incredible drums are made. With that in mind, here's our very own Paul Burke about some of the factories he's been to and some of the gifts he's received.
I've been to DW factory, I've been to Sonar, I've been to Yamaha. They've all been really different. What I liked about Sonar, have you been to Sonar?
No, not yet. It
was just so laid back. There was like, they're in the middle of the Black Forest. The factory's in a village. So I think at least probably about half of the staff live in this village. Some of them have been in there for 30, 40 years. It was a really nice, slow-paced factory as opposed to the DW factory, which was all out. It was. It was a total different vibe. Brilliant in its own way. Sonar was really laid back. Yamaha, their facility in China where they make all the top end, the recording custom and the Absolute series, that was totally different. There was no drumsticks, nobody playing drums there. They were all about quality. I mean, everything had to be 100% or it was just rejected. So they were, not that the other factories weren't, but I'm just saying they were so focused on quality and production side of it, it kind of felt a wee bit soulless in that respect. But what would you rather have? A drum kit that came out of factory and guys were playing it all day and having a laugh, or obviously something that was absolutely perfect. So great to see these memories and things you learn at these factories really enhance the brands that we sell. I mean, our Yamaha business has been going up every year since, so.
And it's even things that you learned, like the product information that you brought back from some of these places was stuff you wouldn't find.
I mean, when a customer comes in and shows any interest in any of that brand, I'm like, okay, wait till you hear it. I'll tell you all about it. Buckle in. I'll get you a coffee. You wait to hear this. Bore the shit out of them about UV finishing on it.
I mean, that's part of the game, isn't it? It's amazing. I love all that shit. And you just won't find that reading the catalogue, and that's when people know what you're talking about.
Well, that for me, obviously I'm not on the floor anywhere near as much as I used to be, and that that's your thing, and that for me has been great to release all that. But that's what I loved, when people come in and they didn't really know what they were looking for. They knew kind of, we didn't even talk budget. We just talked about, what do you see yourself playing? What can you imagine? Think about it and steering them down that road of getting them something totally unique that they hadn't even thought about. And that was for me something I really enjoyed. As far as matching a customer to a product,
serving. You were talking about
of course. I mean, it wasn't even a case of you were trying to sell them something more expensive. It was just trying to educate and then see them get that product that they hadn't even thought of, because they just didn't know why they should look at it, why they needed it, why they hadn't thought of that brand before.
I mean, we've had customers and had every single 10-inch tom of high end out on the floor to let them try it, and they end up picking something that they just hadn't, like you say, hadn't seen before. I've never thought about that. Great.
I felt the same. I know I'm talking about myself a lot here, but I felt the same when I played Sonar. I would never envisioned myself buying a Sonar kit until I actually heard it and then played it myself.
When you first started here, you were all about your
I was all about
your breakbeats and what was the other thing?
I just 16-inch bass drum or nothing or bust. So it's I get what you're saying as well about when you went to the Sonar factory and how it's all it's very laid back, because I felt the exact same thing with the Mino factory. It's definitely got a German way of life.
Well, do you know what? They do a lot of things right, the Germans, and that's making great product is one of them. But Mino's, there's a lot of kind of correlation between Mino and certainly social media. I mean, their socials, that's where they've really became so strong in the last few years. Their output on those channels is phenomenal, and it's something that we are kind of striving to emulate in a way, and is to make good, consistent content, and that's what it is. It's just it's all content at the end of the day, and brand awareness, and I think that's probably the thing that will help position us, as opposed to other stores. Other stores who do great business, and it's not about being the biggest of the best or anything like that. It's about finding what we do well and sticking to it, and that will get us through. On that note.
I just had one more question.
Okay.
So you've got a pedal snare drum, is that right? That's got your name. Yeah.
Okay,
What's the story behind that?
So 1996. Were you born in 96? What's the deal?
93.
Oh wow.
So I
Okay.
was 3 years
So
old.
back when you were 3, Peril brought out a 50th anniversary one-piece maple snare. Do you remember it?
Yeah.
It was a black lacquered shell, 14 by 5.5. It had gold-plated tube lugs. It had single flange hoops.
claw hoops. No.
Yeah, lovely. But they had run a promotion that year as their 50th anniversary. They were going to take a bunch of dealers in the UK over to see the factory and then spend some time in Hong Kong. You know, money was awash back then. It wasn't. Nobody was worried about marketing budgets and all that then. So I worked in McCormack's at the time, and to get this prize, it wasn't based upon who did the most Peril. It was based upon who showed the most percentage increase that year in Peril. So working in McCormack's, we had Peril, we had Premier, we had Yamaha, Tama, we had all the brands in stock. You know, of course, I just had Peril blinkers on from that point on. Someone came in, I'm looking for a boom stand. Ah, yeah, okay, there's a Peril one. You know, I'm looking for some sticks. Peril are good sticks, you know. So I need a kit for my son to export. It was just, I was just laser focused on getting to the Far East, because the year before that I'd been to the Sabin factory. The year before that I'd been to the Zildjian factory. I was the factory guy, you know. I was responsible for the majority of the sales in that drum department. Then I actually loved working there, you know. I loved, you got a bit of autonomy in that, the drum department being in the basement, because you were out the way, you know. Nobody was really thinking about focus on what we were doing, but we, you know, me and Andy, the guy who worked with me at the time, we just loved drums. We loved selling, and we met a lot of great folk back then. I diverse. So anyway, I was laser focused selling Peril. So come the end of the year, or whenever the time came up to look at the percentage figures, we were like 230% up on Peril that year. We were in. I think we were on 8 of the 10 dealers. Amazing, can't wait. And then one of the McCormack's, one of the family members who owned the store, informed me that I had actually been on 2 trips the 2 years previous to that, you know. And trips were a relatively new thing back then. They didn't happen that often. So it should go to somebody else. Somebody else should experience this, and I was absolutely gutted. So Grant, who worked there, who sold keyboards, who's an absolutely lovely guy, and I'm glad that he went, because he was, I don't know if you ever met Grant. Anyway, he's a gem. He went to the factory and he had a great time, and he loved Hong Kong and all that stuff, and I sat in Glasgow. But the one good thing about it is, and he didn't tell me this, it was a nice surprise when it turned up. A box turned up a few weeks later, and my name was on it, and Grant says, "Oh, that's for you." And I opened it up, and it was one of the 50th anniversary snares, and inside there was a little badge and stuff, and it had my name on it, you know. So,
oh wow!
So that was pretty cool. So I've still got it. It's the only piece of gear I've ever kept. You know, working in drums since the age of 16, I've been really blasé about gear. You know, got this 1 minute, get rid of it, get something different. You know, so I was never precious about gear. In the same way, guys come in and go, "I've had the same kit since I was 12," or, you know, "I'll never part with this." I'm like, yeah, whatever, just get rid of it and try something different. Never had that. But this snare, obviously it's got my name inside it, so it's never going to go. Anyway, so yeah, and I still use it. I've used it in loads of recordings and gigs and stuff.
Yeah, because I've said, like, whenever you would do the occasional gig photo, you know, it would always be like, it's
my only decent piece of gear. That's why it's the only thing I actually own.
It's quite interesting, because you see, like, usually, like, you'll see, like, just insert a drum kit here, but you'll always see that snare there. And I always thought that's
what's
really
been great about that though, actually, is it's educated us in here, because you've taken stuff out.
I'm all about the education.
Absolutely. You've taken stuff out that we would have been maybe not too fussed about, you know, like we just grab a Peisty ride and you know, play that for them. By the way, this is great, you know, there's a customer for this.
You know, I think actually that one of the things about gear is that some of the low end stuff, I mean, I gigged a Peril Decade for a couple of years there, and I just took it out with Emperors on it. I think it was at G2s, can't remember. It sounded amazing. You know, I think there's obviously a snobbery about low end gear, but some of that stuff can sound amazing with good heads on it. But then there's also a snobbery about people using high-end gear for relatively low-paying gigs. If they want to do that, that's amazing. Good, go for it. It doesn't matter. There's no kit is too good to take out in a gig. No kit's too maybe there are kits too bad to take a gig. I'm not sure you would play the Hydro with a Tornado. You know what I mean? But
challenge accepted.
Anywho, that never worried me, and there's some good gear at that price point, which sounds amazing.
Cool. I don't know why I went all
I have
American.
no idea what your last question was, but
that was it. Our final story comes from Mr. Todd Zuckerman. It was an absolute honour and a privilege to have Todd on the podcast this year. We discovered when researching Todd that he's a pretty details-orientated guy. So here he is discussing exactly that.
So from that night and from DVDs and all the stuff I've kind of watched you do over the years, it's come to light in my head that you're a really details orientated guy. Everything about your playing, everything about even the way you email is super like precise and detailed. Has that always been a thing for you?
I guess I don't think of it in those terms because it's just maybe how I'm wired and what I do. So to me, it feels natural, but the perception might be detailed. I try to have some sort of order, in my universe, whether it's the way I communicate verbally or through the written word or through playing. I'm fiercely on time and prompt to a fault, and if I drop the ball on something, it's like for a moment it feels like the world is over, even though I know it isn't. But I like to have everything sort of prim and proper. But at the same time, I'm not crazy about it either. At the same time, so I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's things like we've been watching your Modern Drummer video when you were talking about the 10 most underrated drum performances, and it's like you pick out little nuggets that people would miss, like they would just maybe they're not listening properly or they're passively listening. When you pick out like these little nuggets, like the Dave Mattox thing where he plays like one kick drum note, it's like that's just the details, man. It's all there.
I had so much fun putting that together, and I think that's part of the reason why is because I love sharing the little bits that I think make something great. Like it'd be very easy to put on Steve Gadd, Asia, Steely Dan. It's like, oh, you like Asia? Like, no kidding. You know what I mean? So you're not really sharing something like, check this out. I mean, those things have been studied, ad nauseum. I mean, like, hey, here's Rosanna, Jeff Porcaro. You're like, of course. So I wanted to pick things that maybe weren't often talked about or noticed and sort of shine a little light on the things that kind of make me smile, the little bits. It's like cooking when you have great food. There's some little spice, there's some little something that adds so much, and without that, it's not the same thing.
So how does that inform when you write parts?
Well, if I have the time to sort of properly compose something, I try to get in those little details where things will formulate. If I have a couple weeks where I know I'm going to be recording something, it comes into focus more. Like, that's cool, that's nice. You don't need to do that. Straighten that out. Layer an extra bass drum with a snare drum right here within that lyric line or in between the lyrics, and it just adds a little extra something. People don't necessarily know what it might be, but all of a sudden you feel something.
Yeah,
that's what I try to do, and I like. There's magic in the subtext. There's magic in playing little things that add a bit of flavor, just like that spice in cooking. That isn't a look at me moment, where, okay, the singer stopped and here's a little thing and then back to the story. If there's just something that is a little interesting, a ghost note, the way the hi-hats open up, or hitting the bell of the ride cymbal instead of a crash, just a little ding, a little flavor, whatever it is. Those are the things that kind of create personality to the track. That's beyond just keeping time or playing music like, okay, it's the verse, so I'm kind of medium chill, and now I got to play a fill into the chorus. Now we get louder, and then we get back to the verse. That formula works, but then again, that's very formulaic. If you can add some things in there that will give the song a personality, or what I call hook fills, where you play a certain same fill, no matter how simple, going into the chorus. And then maybe the second time it's the same thing, but there's one extra element that's different. And then the third time might be the busiest. Or you play the same fill going back into the verse. Then you're stamping a personality on the song to where if you heard that song without those moments, it's not the song anymore. To make a great point, if you went to a wedding and the band was playing In the Air Tonight and the drummer played anything but good, you'd go, what the hell? It's not the song anymore.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I just went for the biggest personality fill of all time, but that was just to make an example that if I can come up with something where that is now etched into the composition, I think that's a great thing, even if it's
Yeah, it makes it really human, I think.
That's what I tried to do.
How would it then help when you did things like you had to learn all that Styx music way back at the beginning, because I remember when you were watching your DVD, you're talking about picking out parts that John, right? It was the drummer's name, that he had played, and you had to make sure that they were there. You could have played any fill, but now I'm going to make sure that it's this fill that's on the record, even if the time moves, even if, you know what I mean?
Right. I mean, the interesting thing about John Panazzo's playing is I always say this, and I never mean any disrespect. He was a very active drummer for a guy that had limited technique, which brought his sort of unique personality to the thing. It's one step towards a Keith Moon type of thing. There's a lot of playing, but it's a lot of down the toms and da-ga-da-ga-da-ga-da-ga-da. So it was a cool template for me to look at and examine and go, okay, a lot of the stuff was done in the 70s with that sort of 70s mindset, and they recorded without a click track, so a lot of the songs are breathing from section to section, and it's cool. So how do I now bring that into then a 1996 perspective, which that was brand new. That was the future back then. What I had to do was try to hippen up some of the ideas, kind of bring it to 1996, but retain the flavor of what was on the records that sold 30 million records that I had nothing to do with, Right. So that was a fun template because there was a lot of playing involved. It wasn't just, every song wasn't just playing 2 and 4. They were very active pieces of music with some progressive rock leanings on some of the things. So I just tried to do what I thought was best at the time. And I knew that my job was to hold the other guys in the band so they're comfortable and they can relax and they can have fun and they can do their thing without ever having to look back to me worrying about, am I going to be consistent? Am I going to play different fills all the time? You get into a groove, literally, where you're just playing. But that's what my job was. Make them comfortable and happy doing their things to the best of their ability.
Yes, kind of selfless, egoless.
I wouldn't say egoless because at the same time I wanted to play well, but I knew what my job description was, sure. And I knew that, if I was inconsistent on or off stage, there could be issues and that I could be replaced at any time.
Yeah, for sure.
Has that changed any since your time progressing with the band? Like, have you been allowed to kind of have a little bit more freedom and put your own, when you're talking about a stamp on things, like, has that changed at all as you've moved forward?
It's been this sort of gelatinous living organism the whole time floating through space. So I mean, yes, in some regards, but the cool thing is they never, even from the beginning, they never told me what to play or what not to play.
All right, okay.
They gave me freedom to choose what I wanted to do. And there was only 1 or 2 times in there, like we had a month of rehearsals before the first tour where I went for something, I tried something, and it didn't work, and I kind of got up for a second, but no one said anything. So I feel very fortunate that they gave me that sort of freedom and that I've sort of lived in that gelatinous, constantly moving organism for all this time. So I just try to play what's right and what works for everyone. But make no mistake. I mean, I have bosses in the band. If they wanted me to do something, or if they've suggested something, they might suggest if something felt a little slow the other night, and I'd go listen to the recording, and I check it out against the original or the night before, because that's my job. And there's been a couple times where someone said, fooling yourself felt a little slow, and I went back and I'm like, it's 144. It's exactly where the record was. And they're like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I got you.
Yep.
Don't worry about it. And normally I think live, if it feels a little slow, it's probably just right.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. I mean, it must be different playing gigs the size of the gigs you play, stadiums, where the little stuff doesn't get lost, but it's not like you're playing in a club where the energy is going to be different. It has to be right.
Yeah, I mean, here in the U.S. we play every size venue, from the biggest places to, and then we'll do a run of theaters, that are 1,500 or 2,500, and those gigs are great because they're normally longer. We can stretch out and play some of the deeper cuts, and it has that sense of intimacy, and that I know that the sound is generally going to be better than what would be normally at an arena. So. It's nice to have that variance, but at the same time, like if I'm playing a groove and there's some ghost notes, and it's an arena, I know that quite possibly, depending on where someone's sitting, they might not be hearing that at all. But the groove would have a different swagger if I weren't playing that. If I was just popping out 2 and 4, that would be a different vibe. Then the whole thing would feel a little different.
Yeah, I guess you still have to play it for you at times, right?
Yeah, well, but I'll use that to also help subdivide the time, or if I want to get something just like a touch of a swing, that is going to affect the placement of the bass drum and the snare drum. It might affect how someone else is playing. The thing that happens all together collectively, again, cooking.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Drummers Only Radio.
You can find us online at www.drummersonly.co.uk.
Drop us a line. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Drummers Only UK.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. We're on Apple, Spotify and YouTube.
Any questions? info@drummersonly.co.uk is the email, or if you need leads, it's leads@drummersonly.co.uk.
Thanks again for listening,
and we'll see you next time.